All right, I will call the June 20th, 2023 Board of Education meeting to order. Does someone have their?
Thomas is getting it fixed. Kate Thomas,
Here.
Troy Carr,
Here.
Deb Baker,
Here.
Jim Hansen, Clay Colomb,
Here.
Jamie Clapham,
Here.
and Michael Berkland.
Here.
And we have Pastor Craig Moore here for the invocation, please. Make sure you turn it on.
I don't know.
Is it light green, sir?
Oh, there it's green now. Was red before. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, I thank you for your presence, for your direction and your guidance in our lives. I thank you, Lord, for your Holy Spirit's presence here. May your presence fill this room, fill our hearts and our minds, and fill the hearts and minds of each of our school board members. Bless our students and their families. May they excel and succeed in learning the things that will prepare them to succeed in life. Lord, I pray your blessing upon our administrators who lead our teachers and our support staff and make such crucial decisions. Give them wisdom, guidance, creativity, and courage to always do the right things as they do their work. Lord, bless the principals and the assistants and all the teachers and support staff. Let them have a positive influence in the lives of our students. Lord, give wisdom, strength, courage, creativity, love, and grace as they deal with students and the challenges that they face. Pray that you'll help them to relax, rejuvenate, and enjoy their summer. Lord, bless the school board members. Give them wisdom as they make difficult decisions. Help them to be led by your Spirit to know what to do. Lord, give them strength, courage, creativity, perseverance, grace, and a spirit of cooperation to accomplish the greatest possible outcomes. And Lord, we desire and declare and proclaim Rapid City Schools to be the best schools in South Dakota, and South Dakota schools to be the best in the nation. Lord, would you put that into place and let it be so? In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are on to approval of the proposed agenda. I need a motion. Jim. Second. Deb. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we are on to sharing this success. We have the Rapid City Public School Foundation here first up.
Good evening, board. I'm appearing in a different capacity tonight. First, I want to start off by having Kara Flynn, Executive Director of the Rapid City Public Schools Foundation. She's going to be recognizing some board members that are outgoing.
Thank you, Kelsey. I am definitely shorter than that. Thanks, board, for putting this on the agenda. We're here to recognize some of our outgoing board members who served on the board for quite a number of years. Jason McGow, I can have you stand up. Was our board president this year and brought the Teacher of the Year program back. He served 6 years on the school board and has a real dedication to public education and the Public School Foundation. And we'd like to thank him. Deb Frederick is here, whom I think you all know from the Above and Beyond program. And Deb has completed 5 years on our board, and we would like to thank her for all her service. She's been on Evening of Excellence in different committees, but she really has brought the happiness and joy back to Above and Beyond. And I think all the school buildings feel that, and the board members feel that. And I definitely know that our board feels like that. And that program is really supposed to bring joy to the staff. And so I think she has been the perfect person to breathe some more life into that. And then we also before, Clay Colomb has also served on our board, and he for a couple of years, 2, 3. And so we would like to thank, we would like. Well, that's all right. But he always had great things and things to add as a board member, and we'd like to thank him. And then also there's our student rep was going to arrive. I don't see her. Reagan Davis from Central was our student rep this year, and she always was great about representing the student voice, which is really important in our work. And also took all the pictures at Evening of Excellence. So we thank her. And then Peggy Hannafin, who was the board secretary for years and has always been on Evening of Excellence and the marketing committee. And she steps down after 6 years. So I'd like to recognize her service. And finally, Jane Kramer, who has been the chair of Evening of Excellence for a lot of years and also works at the monument. So we will really miss her. She has a sold out show tonight, so she is not here. But this board is a working board, not just a volunteer board. So we'd all like to recognize the fact that these people put in a lot of hours of their own time and hopefully are making Rapid City Schools a better place, just like you all want to do. So thank you for recognizing the board members.
President Thomas.
Okay, do you want to be in the picture?
Might as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a little slow. Sorry. Thank you. You can stay up here playing.
Yeah, don't go too far, Clay. Tonight we'd like
Hold
to.
on 1 second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mrs. Swaggart, go ahead.
Hello, President Thomas. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I would like to just take a moment to apologize to the Rapid City Public School Foundation Board of not being there. I am greeting you from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I want to also thank you for the work that you've done. I know the board has heard me say often that it's amazing how many times I get to run into former students, but Jason was a former student of mine. And I knew Peggy because I coached her daughter in cheerleading. And so it's always interesting how things come full circle. But this entire board, when Kara says it's a working board, she is not kidding at all. They work hard, all of the things they do for the public schools, and it is amazing. And I want to thank them for their service and tell them that, we have other volunteer opportunities for them in the district if they're bored after they get off this board. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Swaggart. Go ahead.
I get the lucky pleasure of honoring Clay tonight. Coy is absent tonight, so I'm thankful to be here and get this opportunity. We would like to recognize Clay as an outgoing board member and extend our sincerest gratitude for the work Clay has done for the district during the time he has served on the board. His commitment to students, his appreciation for staff, and his knowledge and experience in business and finance has served both the district and the community at large. He was, whether he's sitting in a board meeting, attending a committee meeting, or participating in negotiations, you can rely on Clay to be very calm, thoughtful, reasonable, and always willing to see other people's perspective. Clay's fellow board members would describe him as level-headed, positive, wise, witty, and discerning. And so I'm here on behalf of everyone to say thank you, Clay, for your service.
I don't think I've ever spoken from here before. No, I'm here. I'm gonna do it. Thank you for those words, Kelsey, and thank you, everybody here. But I have a list. First, need to thank my wife, Lexi, and my kids for supporting me to do this. It wasn't an easy job, but I couldn't have done it without them. So I thank them for their patience and putting up with me even more more of my work than they had to. So that was good. Also like to thank the voters that, chose to put me in this position. It was a wild time when got elected, right when COVID was first starting. Yeah, kind of took over the first couple of years of this too. Everybody who helped me on my campaign, Chad, Todd, Malcolm, Christine, many of you I'm forgetting, I'm sorry. And Christine Stephenson, who I would guess got a sub in for a term. She was very helpful organizing my campaign, was always somebody there to talk to. And then there's Jim Hansen, who after I got elected, reached out and was kind enough to give me some advice and always be there for somebody to talk to on this, Jim. I really appreciate everything you did, and I'm really glad of our friendship that we formed during this. So thank you very, very much. Kate, served on the whole time. I think we've done a lot together. We've worked very well. Really appreciate everything that we've been able to do together, work on. We've been able to, I think, bring different viewpoints to everything, but at the end of the day, I know we're both, here for the same reason, and I think we have accomplished a lot. So thank you for, spending this time on the board with me. Deb, I've really enjoyed our 2 years together. I think we became, really good friends, be able to, talk out a lot of things. And, again, I do like to listen to a lot of different viewpoints. And I think, again, at the end of the day, we always came to a place where we could agree and, do what's best for the school, the students and staff. Mike, I know we got 1 year, but I've really enjoyed working with you as well. I know your dedication, prior to this, coming to board meetings as a teacher is very well appreciated. So thank you for the time. Bishop Carr, I've really enjoyed working with you as well, sir. You kind of came in out of nowhere, but your leadership, your dedication, this board is very lucky to have you, as well as the community. And Jamie, same to you. I mean, when you started campaigning, calling me up for advice, talking with me, again, as with all of you, the school district is lucky to have somebody with your passion on the board. Fellow or older board members, like to thank Amy Palicki, was always there to bounce ideas off, to give me advice. Hope she's enjoying her retirement from the board. Kara, we got to, work together very well when we're on the board and on the Public School Foundation. Again, I apologize for my absences this term or a year. It's been a wild one at work. Gabe Doney, Brian Johnson. I'd like to congratulate not only Christine, but Walt Swan on coming in. When I was campaigning, Walt was also campaigning for city council. We kind of worked together on that. The staff, the students, Nicole, Coy, Kelsey, all of you, you made this a very rewarding experience. And I just want to thank everybody. It's too many to name, but again, the first 2 years of this with COVID was crazy. This last year has been, I really felt we've been accomplishing things, and very thankful again for each and every one of you for helping me and helping the district. So I'll end it on that. Thanks again. Oh, Shirley, thank you. I am so sorry. The probably most important person, keeping me in line, keeping our schedule.
Can't do anything without her. Mrs. Clapham. I'll take a picture.
Okay.
Mrs. Clapham.
I'll be brief, but it's interesting you say things will come full circle, and you're saying what Jim has to you, and I felt that you did that same to me. I always felt welcomed. I always felt that you were open, and anybody doing this job knows it's like jumping into deep end of a pool with no flotation device. So it is really truly appreciated. I have appreciated working with you and your perspective and your openness and welcomeness, and it is invaluable, and it's hard to see you go.
Mrs. Swaggart.
Clay, I wanted to say that from one CEO to another, I really relied on you a lot as I stepped into the interim role. I will miss your counsel on financial situations, and also every other time that I reached out to you, I really felt that you gave thoughtful and sound advice, and don't be surprised if I still reach out. So
I hope you do.
Have a good board retirement.
Thank you.
Mrs. Baker.
I just want to know who's going to beat me to adjourning the executive session. I have thoroughly enjoyed working. I love your wit and your honesty, and you've just been a great guy to work with, and I'm gonna miss the crap out of you. And I'll start falling if I say anything else.
Mr. Hanson.
Clay, thanks for the nice words and the nice words to the whole board. It has been a pleasure becoming your friend and understanding it. And the beautiful thing of this is there was many decisions that we were opposite, but we had conversations and came to the middle. Even if we didn't agree at the end with our votes, at least we remain friends, which is the most important thing. And I wish you well in your new endeavors and all of that. And please take care and reach out from time to time.
Oh, well, thank you, Jim.
And I would just follow up with, yes, you are very steadfast. You brought a unique perspective that I very much appreciated. I've very much enjoyed working with you as well. You've been calm during same sort of thing, even if we didn't agree with votes. It was water off the back. It was not a big deal. And I will miss your perspective and miss working with you. So thank you.
You.
Yep.
Get in there, sure.
Or they're clerk, so I'm nobody. Thank you.
If anybody was going to, you could.
All righty, that will bring us to persons wishing to address the school board very quickly. Issues that affect an individual or particular school should be first addressed at the building level, so staff have the opportunity to address the issue. Focus on your main points. Don't be repetitive. Personal matters or complaints that directly or indirectly identify an employee shall not be discussed. And to maintain a civil dialogue, threats and intimidation are not allowed. Our first speaker is Matt Cohn. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, there's some issues going on with that I've been notified of through family and friends that have students in the school district. North Middle School, some of the graduates from there from the 8th grade class this year were targeted by a particular individual at one of the high schools. You told me I can't give their names, so I'm not going to give their names. This individual selected 90% Native American students based on last name and recommended them be transferred to a different high school because she didn't want to deal with them. The second topic of conversation is a homophobic and racist individual that is in Rapid City High School that has targeted the LGBT community and has threatened strip searches of these students. What brought my attention to this was not only my family and friends, kids talking to me about it, but the incident that occurred December 3rd with a student at Central. That created a firestorm that I'm sure your district does not want to deal with. I have no direct children in your schools. But I am concerned. I have been asked repeatedly by both Native American and whites and other people, how do we stem racism in this community? One of those things is to abide by what Martin Luther King said. Judge me based on my character. Not the color of my skin, not the color of who I'm from, not my last name. And that's how these 8th graders were targeted, was by last names, because of older siblings that had problems. I'm frustrated. I'm of mixed race. My family is of mixed race. And I don't appreciate it. You know, when I moved here almost 11 years ago, I considered Rapid City to be almost an oasis. What I've discovered about Rapid City, it is no different from where I come from. And to be totally honest with you, if this board does not take action on these, and if you would like to call me directly, I will give you the names of those individuals if you would like. You don't want me to discuss them in public because it's a shame on this district. And to be totally honest with you, that's unfair to your students. You have a responsibility, you took an oath, to make sure that these kids have a safe environment to go to school in. And I know that there's gangs and drugs and all kinds of stuff going on these campuses. I'm not blind to it. My grandchildren and my friends' children come home and talk about it. But you have a responsibility to these students. I'm not going to make any threats, but I can promise you that I will follow up on this with the board, with the superintendent if she's available. Because I've read her bio, 2 masters and a PhD, very educated person, wants to make changes, wants it to be a positive experience for the students. Threaten strip searches. They're against the law, number 1, for security. Number 2, the school has to have a doggone good reason why. There's also forms that are supposed to be being filled out. I don't know if they're being filled out according to the Attorney General's comments in the mid-90s. Each district has been allowed to run their own system. And that's based on my research. If you're going to hold your students accountable for what I saw on your website, you need to hold your staffing accountable as well. My next question is, what about your security people? Are they licensed in the city? Do they have to be? Every other security company around in this town has to be licensed through the city of Rapid City in order to conduct security business or services. Number 2, what's their training? Is there any training being given to these people? And number 3, why are they running roughshod over a bunch of kids? I know kids are not perfect. I raised 6 of them myself. And I know that some of this is embellished and some of this is lies and everything else, but there's a lot of truth in it too. I'm going to hold the board accountable to follow up with this, all of you, because it needs to be done.
That's time. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Next speaker, Florence Thompson.
Thank you, board. As you said, my name is Florence Thompson. I'm a former school psychologist for over 40 years, and I'm a grandmother of public school student. I'm also a member of a hate group. Our national organization, USPI, has been named a hate group by the Southern Poverty Leadership Council. So we have arrived on the national scene. It kind of, you know, sometimes you can tell more about people's enemies than their friends. So we consider it a badge of honor that we're among that group that's named. So just thought I'd let you know where I'm coming from as president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education. I want to talk about dangerous policies. You know, sometime back, there was a famous statement made about chickens, America's chickens coming home to roost. Well, sometimes it takes a long time for chickens to come home to roost. And I think schools should be future oriented. And what's going to happen in the future when some of these policies, the chickens start coming home to roost? For instance, the books, the pornographic books, the coarsening of our student population, the sexualization of our kids at early ages. These things are going to cause long-term harm and long-term harm to society as well. And then the transgender fad. This is causing damage, not just to the kids who become not just emotionally damaged, but physically damaged. And they become permanent medical cases and permanent psychiatric cases. So it isn't just the child. It's also the parents who suffer, the grandparents. I recently talked to a grandparent who just was telling everyone he was just in grief. His beautiful granddaughter decided to become a boy and was going through all kinds of transition. And he was in total grief. He's now in a very sick man, really at death's door. And I think a lot of it is that grief that he's suffering from his granddaughter's, the loss of her. The Epic Times is doing a new documentary on the transgender movement and showing all the damage that's being done and telling the truth about it. You know, we have pushed a lie to these kids. We've told them that you can change your sex, that you can change your gender, and that you will be happier. And that's all a lie. It doesn't work that way. And so what happens when these chickens come home to roost? Well, you have these damaged kids. A lot of them are going to turn to legal means. They're going to come back. They're going to sue the doctors. They're going to sue the counselors. They're going to sue the teachers, the schools, the people who did this to them, the people who affirmed them into these actions, which damage their lives. And, you know, depending on how court cases go, it could become a trend where, you know, it could be huge because there are thousands and thousands of kids caught up in this. So I think before we jump on every bandwagon, we really ought to look at what's going to happen in the future and when those chickens come home to roost.
Thank you. We have no more speakers tonight, so we are on to board response to open forum. I'm sorry that the gentleman left. I hope that Mrs. Swaggart, you can follow up with maybe a couple of things. If that man comes back and gives you or a call or whatnot, he didn't leave any way of contacting him. So hopefully there can be some follow-up with that. I would just say that our security is well licensed and trained. So and that's all I have to say. Does any other board member? Sure. Okay, Troy, Mr. Carr.
One of the things that I hope comes out of the opportunity for the community to come and speak to the board, that there's communication, and I am open to hear any concerns that the community has about the board. But I think along with that is also important, and why we have this portion of the agenda is so that we can address different issues that are brought before us. I know the community has heard it a lot, but it's very important that parents, anybody, if you have an issue at a particular building, that you make sure that you start with at least the principal. I haven't heard about any of these incidents that our speaker was talking about. And so the importance of that is so that when we do address it, that the principal, administration has had some or hopefully they've had some previous knowledge of the incidents. It's so important. I hope it doesn't become too cliche-ish that when you see something, say something. And that starts again at the building level so that people are aware about it. The principals, the superintendent, nobody can do anything about your particular issue if it's just talked about amongst the community. We want to be aware of things that are happening in our schools. So if you can do that process of building level, that will get to then the superintendent, that will then get to the board. And at that time, we can address those different things. It's on record at a meeting, the statement that I made of a personal incident with a family member about racism. I think I made this statement a couple of meetings ago, but I want to make it again and let the community know that the school board is aware of racism. We're concerned about the issue. We're making plans to do something about the issue. We're not just hearing people talk about it and not do anything about it, but we are actively engaged in addressing the racism in the school district. And so we've had conversations with Superintendent Swaggart, and she has some ideas and the board has some ideas about some strategies that we can use to address those. And community will be hearing about that hopefully in the coming school year. Thank you, President.
Mrs. Clapham.
I would just say similar, it is unfortunate, and I get that time is very valuable, but that when people speak, I hope that they're here to hear the response. And also, I think that most of us as a board have worked very hard to truly open the lines of communication. So even as Bishop Carr said, the school level, the superintendent level, but I've never seen an email, never, that we are open to that, and that, I would say, I won't say 100%, but I respond to about 90% of communication I receive. And I think we as a board work really hard to do that. So I know sometimes when things are very personal and deeply emotional, and there's a lot of that there, but also to go through the steps that can help make effective change is really, really important. And that we do it. It is very unfortunate to hear any of our students to feel that they are being mistreated, misrepresented. That is absolutely unacceptable. And I would definitely invite community to reach out, because none of the 7 of us can't do it alone either. And that we want to work together as a community.
Mr. Berglund.
Thank you. Kind of just piggybacking off of what they said, if that gentleman or anyone else is listening, there are legal reasons why we cannot discuss these things here and why they do have to go through. It gets really muddy if we jump right up to the top, unfortunately, or fortunately. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is, in my opinion and kind of federal law's opinion, racism and homophobia, transphobia, any other kind of discrimination do not belong in Rapid City area schools. Regardless of any political feelings, we do have a obligation to educate every kid, no matter what. You see that in the sex offender policy that we have tonight. That is a touchy subject, but we do have a federal obligation to educate every kid and to kind of meet them where they're at. So I just wanted to say that I understand the legal issues, but I also wanted to put out there that, yes, as Bishop Carr mentioned, we are working on racism and any other kind of discrimination do not belong in our schools.
Thank you. All right, moving on to conflict of interest. We have none turned in, so we are on to some of these new policies for the first reading. I need a motion and a second. Jim? Oh, did anybody want anything removed or to discuss? Sorry. Not on these ones. Okay, gotcha. All right, Jim.
Second.
And Michael. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, on to the approval of proposed consent agenda. Are there any that you want pulled?
Yes, can I have L pulled?
Okay, any others?
Can I get H pulled?
Is that it? All right, so A through Z minus H and L. I need a motion. Jim? Deb? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, on to H. I need a motion. Jim?
Second.
Michael? discussion.
I know Coy's not here, so maybe Superintendent Swigert can pop in, or maybe, you know, I don't know. Maybe someone else knows. But this seems more like kind of his realm, and I was just kind of wondering what exactly is it for? I read through the description, but and who would be using this? Is this kind of the businessy side of things, or will our like secretaries or anyone be dealing with any sort of stuff like this with this?
Mrs. Swaggart? Do you know?
Well, I don't know. I think it's a business. I mean, when I read it, I thought it was something for the business office. Shirley, do you know who brought it forward?
It was Mr. Sassy and Peggy Saxler. With all of the federal laws changing ever so much on accounting and all of that, this is a program that will help them keep attuned to stay current on that, is what I gather from that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm sure you can follow up.
Yeah, I'll
too.
follow
Go
up.
ahead.
Yeah.
I can't speak specifically for this, but you know, managing, CFO before I was CEO of current organization, these laws changed, they changed a lot. The software that you use to manage it also is updated quite often. And usually when something really changes, that's not part of your base package. Let's find something else. I won't give my opinion on that anymore. You can probably figure out how I feel about it, but yeah, it's, to ensure that you're, doing the proper accounting, doing these things, it is necessary, but
And-
sometimes at an extra cost.
And money well spent to avoid
Yeah, the
fees.
being out of compliance or doing it
Exactly.
is a much worse option than paying the
Yes.
fee. I will say that though.
And I would also say that the amount of documentation now required for the accounting of any federal funds has greatly increased, and being able to use a program to help make sure that we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's to get that information to the state and to the federal level so that we are not found in violation. I'm sure that this is why Coy brought this forward.
Oh, Mr. Carr, sorry.
I think this agenda item falls under the category of the painting, field painting thing. I think for me, it's so important to maybe kind of be pre-briefed on what we're voting on. I understand the financial and needing to upgrade, but I shouldn't have to research the information or ask, what this is. The information should be brought to me, especially whoever puts it on the agenda item. And that would help inform me to make a decision. So
Is there a memo on that? When
There
you
is
link it?
not. I will reach out to Mr. Sassy, and I'm sure Superintendent Swigert will do the same, that we'll try and keep on top of that for the next time. And our apologies on that. We
And I-
expected Mr. Sassy to be here, however, but still, we should have had a memo on it.
There is a little bit of a description of it, and I was just mostly more curious. I totally agree that absolutely, I'm sure this is worth it. But I was just more curious, like what does it look like? Is it just behind the scenes? Is there something public facing? I'm sure we need it, and I trust that, but just didn't really know what it was.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, Mrs. Baker.
I know we get the agenda ahead of time, so we could have called him and asked. So I've done that a number of times when there's a big amount on there and I'm not sure what it is. I will call him and ask. So, yeah, okay.
Okay, with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, on to L. I need a motion. Jim. Deb. Discussion.
So, sorry, I have so many screens open. Was trying to raise my hand, but it is a very, very tiny grammatical change. If you look down to B, and I had read it a couple times and it had been asked, it's not clearly specified when it says the library selection committee, it's not clear that it's meaning the district or at each school. So all I would like to add in, Ms. Parker has already seen this and added it. On B, it should say the library selection committee at each school. So it's clear that we're talking about multiple library selection, not that there's one for the entire district, because
Referring to number 1B.
yes.
Okay. we will do that.
Yes.
Well, we need a motion
Sorry.
for perfect language.
Yes, so it would be to change IAAC number 1B, to say the library selection committee at each school. That's all. I
Okay.
added.
Does she have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, back to the original motion for passing IIAC. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Moving on to items for board information. We have Brown and Brown. First up for the insurance renewal. Probably have to put that up again.
Looks like we're screen sharing. And if there's a way I can get that, oh, it's right on the big monitor there. Okay. Okay. Good evening, board members. Last time we were here, we talked about the preliminary renewal for the employee staff benefits. And not much has changed from the numbers that we did present. But what we wanted to do today was provide a real brief recap of what those costs and impacts are going to be like for the district and the staff members for next year. So you'll probably notice when you got this deck, there was about 28 pages. I'm not going through all 28 pages today. Who's happy about that? Okay. So we did do last time, for many of you that were here, Clay, I'm not sure if you were here last time. Oh, you were? Okay. We went over some of the financial information, and just to be very brief about that, with the latest updates, the plans are tracking favorable to budget. We would expect a little bit more of a trend towards budget by the end of plan year, which would be August 31st, because these plans all renewed on September 1. Having said that, when we have gone through and calculated the renewals and the projections for next year's medical plans, which is your biggest cost item, you might recall that we were looking at about a 7.7% increase. Those numbers still hold. We did also do an extensive marketing with the available carriers that were, viable for the district. You're currently with Wellmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield. We looked at United Healthcare. We looked at Health Partners, and we also looked at a variety of different stop loss markets. And when we investigated those different programs and opportunities, what we discovered was that we essentially got the district and the staff in the best possible position going forward into the next plan year. So all the internal costs that we discussed at our last meeting are all holding at that recommended increase of 7.7%. And I think, without going through the details of all the numbers on these pages, the big piece of this is to always remember, when it comes to the medical plan, claims drive cost more than anything else. So if you were to look at this bar chart on the upper right-hand corner of your monitor, 88, almost 89% of the district's medical plan costs are all due to the claims. Okay. We have catastrophic coverage for claims that go over 175,000, and we estimate about 9 of those every year. Based on our analytics, we've got 6 of those that have happened so far. But those big claims aren't necessarily the cost driving piece of it. It's the general utilization and, you know, the demographics of your group and a lot of other things. But you will see that, you know, the fixed costs or the what I call the checkbook costs that are guaranteed to come out every single month are for your stop loss, which covers those catastrophic claims, represents about 7.5% of the total district cost. And then your administration, that's Blue Cross, getting you those great discounts and providing your staff with good customer service. That's at that 3.8% level or at the top line there. So clearly the claims portion is the most important. And when we calculate the total cost change of that 7.7%, I know a lot of numbers on the page. But when you look at the, bless you, when you look at the very bottom line here, you know, you can see that this budget change is a 7.7% overall increase. And that translates into about a total of $1.3 million, of which the district, we have to divide that cost out between the staff and the district. The district is going to be picking up around $985,000 approximately, and the staff then takes up the balance, or $346,000. So to give you an idea of the feel for that, you know, in the light blue, we list all the different contributions for the employee tier, employee plus one, and family coverage. But for the single coverage, for as a way of an example, that feels like an $8.29 increase on the medical plan per month. Okay. Your family tier coverage would go up about 57. Benchmarked, those are, you know, those increases are within benchmark. A 7.7% increase is slightly below market in terms of trend, because medical trends in that 8 to 9% range, depending on how you look at it. So that's the thing that we're fighting. So that's the medical. When we look at the dental, we're looking at about a 3% increase overall. And between your 12 and 9-month staffers, you know, that translates into like an 11-cent increase on the single coverage to a little over $1 on the family. Of course, the rates are much less than the medical plan overall in terms of contributions being in that $385 range to $43 range. Okay. And your dental plan is with Delta Dental South Dakota, who the district has had a, you know, good partnership for a number of years. Ancillary lines, it's just a fancy word for your life and your accidental death and dismemberment insurance that the district has for staff. There's no change in cost on that. It's an estimated cost of about $29,000 a year. So when we look at the financial roll-up, that this is something that Coy, you know, we review with him and Gary and the HR team on a regular basis. But your overall budget from the district perspective is about $14,841,000. That translates to a 7.3% increase when you blend everything else into that. So that's on your lower right-hand corner there. Okay. So that's the proposed budget. These costs would go into effect in September. And again, you know, what we represent from Brown & Brown is we're your consultant. We work with the various insurance companies to make sure that we're providing the best value from the different carriers. You know, we've done a lot of negotiations with the carriers over the years to make sure that you're paying the least amount for the district. And we're pretty proud of some of the success that we've had doing that. One of the things that we've done this year is we really wanted to measure the barometer, so to speak, of the staff, of how they felt about the benefits package as a whole. And then also see if there was an opportunity to provide additional enhancements to attract and retain staff members, because it's a very difficult marketplace out there, as we all know. So we're trying to figure out what are some really inexpensive things that wouldn't necessarily cost the district any money, but provide another value-based benefit that your staff would appreciate. So what we did is we sent out electronic surveys through the HR team They were sent to 1,753 district staff. We had a response rate of almost 40%, which is good. And we had a completion rate of about 690 total surveys out of that amount. So overall, that's pretty good. What we found was that on the lower right-hand side, the big thing is, medical drives a lot of the discussion. It's going to be, for anyone's insurance package, the most expensive thing that they pay for. A lot of people don't use the coverage, but those that do really, really appreciate it. So we found out about 64% of the individuals that we had discussions with in the survey either felt that their insurance premiums were at market or they didn't know. Okay, so that's an education thing. And 35% felt that they were more expensive than what they could find in the marketplace. But those were generally, no surprise, the family contracts, because there's a higher percentage of premium that's being required to pay on that. Okay, so you have many more employee or staff contracts as opposed to family contracts on the plan just because of that. In terms of the overall satisfaction of the medical program, and again, we reviewed all this information with the insurance committee and they're very appreciative of it. We spent probably an hour with them on this. But, and we went through all the different benefits, but in terms of the highlights of the medical plan, there was generally a pretty good satisfaction rate when it comes to the different plan design elements. And you can kind of see the numbers there. I won't necessarily have to read them off for you, but I would say that that's a good representative feel for how people felt about the plan. So, I think we can all feel good about that. Dental also had a really exceptionally high satisfaction rate in the 90s in terms of how people felt about the basic coverage, the preventative coverage, and the orthodontic coverage, even though there was a 14% dissatisfaction rate with it, it's still generally very, very good. And then we surveyed interest in a new potential benefit to offer, which the insurance committee actually approved, and we'll talk about that. I don't know what the exact procedure is in terms of, if this is a board action item, but this was recommended by the insurance committee. And I believe, I don't want to speak for Coy and the HR team, but they're behind this. That approximately 68% of the respondents felt very, very likely that they would enroll in the vision plan. Now, they didn't really necessarily know what the costs were in this, but they are extremely competitive. So when we did look at the plan selection, we went to 6 different market carriers and we reviewed all the different options with the insurance committee, and they selected IMED. And IMED is a very popular, well-known brand out there. And it's this very top shelf comprehensive coverage with a 4-year rate guarantee with exceptionally low rates. And this is on a voluntary basis. So in other words, the district is not contributing toward this. So by way of example, the employee rate would be about $6.65 a month. And the most expensive rate, not surprised, is the family at $19.55 a month. Okay. So what the plan covers, it also, you can get your vision exam through the medical program, but you can also get it through IMED. And if you go to certain providers, it's no copay. If you go to other providers, it's a $10 copay. And then there's, of course, coverage for frames with a copay and allowance for that, contact lenses and copays for that, and for standard and progressive lenses. So when you look through the actual benefits, you'll find that they're very comprehensive in nature and provide a lot of value. And I think that's why the district insurance committee felt that this is something that, they knew that this was an ask from the employees for a while. HR knew about this, and we just wanted to confirm it through the survey, and it definitely resonated. So we wanted to pass along that information to you for the consideration. Are there any questions on any of these topics? I know Coy's usually here for some of this. And again, I'm not sure what the procedure is in terms of if this is something that the board needs to vote on or not. So I'll just kind of leave it to you guys to determine that.
Mr. Carr has a question.
I'm just curious on the 7.3% increase, how much of that can be attributed to nationwide inflation? Industry?
Medical inflation, there's two different buckets of inflation when you consider the aggregate amount. Medical inflation by itself is around 7.4%, and RX inflation is around 9%. So when you combine the two, depending on the mix, it gets up into that 8% range. So, consumer price index historically has been around 3%, let's just call it. Okay. But, recently that had trended up to around 7 or 8%. So it was matching medical inflation, and everyone was wondering, well, geez, what's going to happen to medical inflation when it's usually 2.5 to 3 times the rate of, the consumer price index. So there was some concern it could go higher than, double digit, which it hasn't. There's been, in the marketplace, delayed care because of, COVID and, people not going in for 1.5 years. So we're feeling a little bit of that right now. So there's some catch up going on right now, but so there's pressures on that, but within your community here, South Dakota has been open. So I think there's a little bit less of that here. So I think that's why, your plans have not had as much of an impact as sometimes you see on a nationwide basis. So hopefully I answered that for you. Yeah.
Mr. Hanson.
Agreements that we have in place done very fast. That's the way the route that it has.
Okay.
We can't hear Mr. Hanson's question.
Sorry.
So what I was saying, Superintendent Swigert, is it's got to go through Coy Sassy, then it's got to go through the negotiated agreement. It's got to go that process before anything ever gets before the board.
My hand was up, President Thomas.
Yes, you go ahead, please.
This was discussed, the fact that there would need to be an adjustment in the negotiation process this year. It was touched upon. I do think it's always important to point out to our employees that when we talk an 8% or a 7% increase on insurance, it is not apples to apples with their raise, because the 7% that they're getting on their wages is based on their salary, and the 7% increase on insurance is based on the amount of money they pay for insurance. So oftentimes I think in my years in the district, I have heard people refer to any increase in insurance as eating up their entire raise. I always think it's important for us to remember that our raise is based on a percentage of our wages, and the increase on insurance is based on a percentage of our cost. And they're two very different numbers. Mr. Berkland could probably school us all on that a little bit. But I wanted to point that out. And then, yes, this has gone through, it's been talked about at insurance committee. It will be brought forth to RCEA and the other groups, leadership teams, and then it will come forward to the board and for an action item. This was just the information piece for the board. So thank you very much for coming and sharing this with us, Mason.
You're welcome.
The only other comment I would have is on your medical contribution perceptions on the survey part. 30% premiums, they thought that the premiums were the same or lower. That is, just those numbers, and 34% didn't know and 35% thought it was more than marketplace. I don't know how we can do a better job of educating that it is a really fantastic insurance premium compared to the at least more private, at least out there, the public, basically, other premiums that, you know, my girlfriend's is through the roof where she works at, and it's a medical service, you know. Either way, I think somehow, hopefully either the HR, I think this isn't a comment for you, but our own administration and HR can do a better job with educating them. They seem to know their dental really well, but maybe they're in for that more often than the
Yeah, I
medical
would
stuff.
also say this, when you look at the respondents, and it's good to get feedback anytime you can from a group like this. There was only about a 40% pickup on the survey.
True.
So typically, if someone has something to say that they don't like something, you're gonna see more of that than you're gonna see the positive affirmation, at least
Sure.
what we find. So just that's something to also keep in mind too. But I think advocating for what you have for the value proposition is something that you always got to continue to push out there. And I know that's what the HR team is doing. They're trying to do more and more of that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we are on to the student handbooks. Yeah, if there's any questions, it's a lot to read through every year. There's a few things to change to match any new laws, that type of thing. If you just want to give a brief, you don't have to go page by page, please.
Yes, it has a light on.
Any
You
questions?
sure you don't want me to go through the all 100
No.
and some odd pages?
No, thank you. Are there any questions from it? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Berkland.
First off, thank you for putting together the memo of changes.
You're welcome.
Kind of like President Thomas was mentioning, it's a lot.
Yeah,
I did have just one question about that memo of changes though.
Sure.
On there, it says that there was a student rep section, representative section added to the handbooks. And I didn't see that. Was I missing that somewhere?
so tell me where you're looking on the memo real quick so I
Under
can.
both- It's actually highlighted. Under the elementary school, middle school and high school, number 3 on, I guess it's 2 and then 3. It says remove the mission and vision statements and added student representative section. And I wasn't seeing where.
Okay, I may have to go back to previous edits because these have gone through multiple edits and there might be a chance that I did inadvertently delete that portion, so I'll bring that back.
Okay, I was just curious what that would look like.
Nope, that
It's
is
not there, so.
fantastic, Mr. Berkland, because yeah, there's a lot of adds and deletes and things like that. So I do keep every version. So I'll easily bring that back. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. That was all.
And thank goodness it's an information item right now. All right.
Right.
No other questions for him? All right. Oh, I think Nicole has her hand up from before,
Oh, it's from before, sorry.
but
Lowering.
anyway, so strategic plan update. Go ahead.
Shirley, am I sharing my screen or are you?
You can share yours, Nicole.
Okay,
And Casey is here as well.
thank you. Hello, board. I would first like to say I'd much rather be doing this in person. Presenting from afar is not my favorite thing, but I am here today and Casey from Huron-Studer has joined us also via Zoom to talk about the strategic plan recommendation. This work started in earlier in 2023. And our goal was to create a strategic plan in a short amount of time that would meet all of the needs of our community and to go through the process of making sure that we had community input. We had we have a roadmap that we'll go through. I'll talk about the steering committee. the opportunities we gave the community to give input and recommendations and next steps. Many people who have been involved in the process so far have seen this slide, but the goal of strategic plans, I love this slide because it literally shows how I think our school operates, district operates sometime. And we operate in this random acts of improvement. And you can see that everybody is working, all these arrows are going all over the place, but they're not going in the same direction. And in our 23 buildings, this is happening. We have buildings working very hard on their school improvement plans, working very hard on the PLC work, working very hard on data, working very, very hard on the instructional framework. But everybody is kind of going in a different direction. And so, if this was perfect, we'd have 23 or more arrows in this box. The idea of a strategic plan is to gather up all of those arrows and get us moving in the same direction. And that is actually to be called, we need to align our acts of improvement so that we're all going the same way. So this slide is really showing the work that we have been doing. The roadmap for our strategic planning process started with a kickoff in March. And we had the steering committee come together and we talked about this process. Casey is our coach from Huron-Studer, and she walked us through all of our steering committee meetings. After we had that first meeting, the next task was to meet with focus groups. And Casey spent 2 days in Rapid City, pretty much not being allowed to leave a room because we had her booked back to back to back with different groups from our community coming in and speaking with her and helping guide our work that we were doing. She did, maybe Casey could speak to this as well, but she did 20, I think, groups while she was here in town. And then she also met with some groups virtually. I will tell you that she shared her favorite group that she met with was the elementary students. They were the most fun group that she met with and had a lot to add to this process. Then we pulled back together with our steering committee and we had a second meeting, and our focus at that meeting was to look at the thematic analysis of what our focus groups had brought to the surface of where our direction and where our work needs to be really keyed into. And we met them together on April 19th to do that. And what we realized quickly is that we needed another meeting to really get that piece right. So we came back together just a couple weeks later on May 17th, and we drafted a kind of a plan. Messed up here. We drafted a plan and we started crafting some of the statements that go along with our 5 pillars. The next thing that we did was we put out a community survey, and Bobby, our community relations manager, was very instrumental in pushing out the surveys. And we got a short turnaround on those, but we're happy with the output or the input we got from our community. Then we gathered back together and we looked at the information from those surveys and the comments that people so kindly took the time to really dive into and share a lot of fantastic information. And we came together as a steering committee. And at this point, it was on May 31st, we actually worked on a mission and vision. And that brought us to where we are now, presenting to the board. So the steering committee included a diverse group of community members working on a team. Casey from Studer Education facilitated that. And we worked to identify our community priorities. We then went over the analysis and the recommendations for feedback. We act as ambassadors of the strategic planning process in the community and brought forth this plan that we are giving tonight. Here are the members of the steering committee As you can see here that we had 3 Board of Education members. We had 4 principals. We had 4 teachers. We had a student from each of the high schools. We had a representation from RCEC, and then we had a good showing of community members. And I do want to thank all of them for participating. What I found interesting about our steering committee is they enjoyed this work so much that on the very last meeting, they asked when we're going to get together again. And so we're going to pull them in as we go into the scorecard work. As I mentioned briefly, we had focus groups and we had the survey. So the focus groups were made up of students, staff, parents, caregivers, and community members. Casey met with 171 people in those focus groups. And then the surveys that were pushed out, we had 2,405 responses. We would have liked more, but even as great as technology is, not everybody wants to participate in a survey via technology. When we came out of this work in that last meeting, we crafted this statement that will help lead Rapid City area schools if the strategic plan is approved. And the statement that we centered on was Rapid City area schools strengthens community through education, communication, appreciation, and celebration. And I felt very humbled by this statement because it was a big focus for me this year as superintendent in those 4 areas. And I appreciate very much that the steering committee feels that that does embody the strategic planning mission that we need to take forth in our district. So briefly, the 5 pillars that all of this work surfaced as where we really need to focus is, of course, the center of that is we are an educational institution. So education is at the heart or the center of everything that we're doing. Next are our 5 pillar areas, and it worked out really nice with our graphic here, but we want to focus on students, staff, facilities, community, and communication. So the statements that came out of that were students under that pillar. Rapid City Area School will welcome and acknowledge all students for their value as an individual in a safe environment where they are educated and prepared with skills to be successful in life. For the staff pillar statement, Rapid City Area Schools will attract, recruit, and retain a diverse, high-quality staff who are respected and empowered to educate our students. Our community statement, Rapid City Area Schools will build collaborative relationships within the community to support and improve the students' educational experience. Our facility statements, Rapid City Area School will ensure safe, modern, and effective learning environments by building, improving, and maintaining facilities to meet changing educational needs. And finally, our communication statement, Rapid City Area Schools will communicate clearly and consistently with all staff, families. I can see what's underneath there. Oops. Students and the community. So the alignment for this success for this strategic plan is we are at the very top of this work. So we have come up with the framework for our district strategic plan and those 5 pillars and the statements. Our next step will be in August, we will develop district and department scorecards with our administration. This will be, the scorecards I don't really love that word, but basically the scorecards are how we are going to track the work that we're doing in the strategic plan to make sure that we are living it and working towards improving ourselves in all of those areas and fulfilling our statements. We will also be creating school scorecards. Those school scorecards will help teachers understand the work and how it ties into our strategic plan. And that is very important because we've talked about how our last strategic plan really seemed to be very large and very detailed, but it ended up sitting on a shelf and it wasn't really used and lived the way we would like our strategic plan to be. So those school scorecards will help us understand how our schools are fulfilling our strategic plan goals. That, of course, works into our PLC work, individual classroom goals, and of course, at the very focus of all of this work is the individual student goals. So our scorecard components, you can see from the work that we did, we are going to have areas of focus, and those are our priorities. Key 5-year and annual goals that will let us know how we are making progress in each area. Progress monitoring measures. How are we doing? What evidence do we have to show if we're meeting our key annual goals? And then prioritizing the strategic actions. What actions are we taking to meet the annual goal for this pillar? And the idea for this work will be that we will be able to come back a couple of times a year and speak to exactly how we are living this plan and the progress that we are making. So we want to thank the Board of Education and Rapid City Area Schools and Community for this work and our focus on strategic planning for our district. And Casey and I can answer questions at this time.
I just really want to quickly say that I'm glad that we didn't do this in a day as some as this wanted to. And that I am very grateful for having hired Casey. She was fabulous, helped everybody move forward, and you were just very good with everybody that you worked with. So thank you for that. Mr. Carr, go ahead.
We could have done it. Superintendent Swaggart, I had a conversation with someone about the steering committee, and I assured them, hopefully correctly, that it wasn't a closed society, that people would be welcome to join that group as we continue with the scorecard. Is that the case, or?
Well, we're going to be kind of forging a new path with this, because typically by the time that the pillars are created and the statements are made, the steering committee work is usually done. But what we heard very clearly from our steering committee is they don't want to be done. They want to be included in helping determine if the scorecards actually live in our strategic plan in the manner that they wanted it to live. So we are going to be pulling our steering committee back together as we create these different levels of scorecards, the district level, the building level, the classroom level. And I will be happy to look at adding people to that process if needed. We'll have to do some catch up, because the idea of pulling that steering committee back for the work is that they did the original work and know what our intent was. Does that make sense, Bishop Carr?
Yes, ma'am. And then last, what's the time frame for completion of each of the steps of the scorecard? That work, is there a time frame for that work? A month, 2 months, 6 months?
I hope that we'll have a really good handle on those scorecard process by December, January. Casey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great spot to target, Superintendent Swaggart. I've got time again with the district leadership this summer. We'll be doing that goal setting work around the scorecard pieces. I know that may not be the term that you stick with, but for now, to have some clarity of language, we'll use that to describe our next step. So we start with those big measures that matter most for your district. And then on that slide of the alignment that showed the strategic plan to the district scorecard down to school scorecards, we sometimes call that line of sight. So it's helping each of your buildings see, how do those big goals set in the strategic plan? What does that look like if I am a principal at an elementary school, or I'm a third grade teacher at an elementary school? What does it look like if I'm a middle school teacher? And so I would say we would probably need another 6 months to really have that work complete.
Other questions?
Did that answer your questions, Bishop Carr?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Mrs.
We're
Clapp.
going to start August 8th and 9th at the, Casey's going to be in working with us. She's really excited about being here during the rally.
One, as everyone said, really appreciative for this work. It feels like getting momentum, and I think in many of the buildings that I have been in, there's been feedback that there's a little bit of feeling like living in silos, that they're functioning as 23 different fingers that aren't actually working together. So I think this helps steer that. And I just want to make sure and clarify, because some of the feedback I've gotten, and being a little bit a step back from it, I suppose, is that the strategic plan that we can see so far feels vague. But I think, so when you talk about those scorecards, is that where you'd come in and say, and I'm just throwing out an example to throw out an example and say, our graduation rate of Native American students would be this, or our reading proficiency would be this by grade 5. And is that where those very quantitative measures come into play?
Yes, Mrs. Clapham, the scorecards are going to really kind of funnel us down into the areas. That's where, reading at third grade, by reading at the third grade level by third grade, that's where that's going to live. So we can focus it more on the grades that pertains to, instead of having this very wide and broad strategic plan that said reading by third grade, but middle and high school teachers wondered what they were supposed to do with that piece of the strategic plan. But by focusing on students and then moving into the grade and building specific, that's going to allow our teachers of those grades to get in, craft the scorecards for their building, their grade level. And so their work is tied to the strategic plan in a way that they get to choose to make that happen.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well, Superintendent Swigert, that next step of the scorecard is where we define what success looks like for each of those descriptors that emerged from all the community conversation, right? When we talk about students prepared for that next step in their life, what are those measures that we are watching to make sure that they're ready to have that start on their future, whatever the option may be that they would like to take after graduation.
Mr. Berkland?
Thank you. Jamie kind of took my question, so I guess mine, it'll turn into a statement. It was basically that, yeah, the last one was a little bit beefy, but I was hoping for a little bit more meat, I guess, to keep it the metaphor there, on this one. So I'm glad to hear that we are planning to add on to that, because I had personally had kind of that same concern being in the district with the previous plan. There were parts of it, like the reading by third grade, the 21st century skills that were very, very specific that I was hoping for. So I'm glad to hear that those are coming. They're just not here yet.
Correct.
Yep.
This process looks different than the previous one, because I think the previous one was rolled out like all in one pretty package, like here you go. But we want buy-in, and we want to really align all of those arrows so that we're going the same direction. And in order to do that, we don't want to hand everything to a staff that they didn't have any say in. So this is just the overarching vision of the strategic plan that we're going to have moving forth. But we're going to get deeper into it and more specific with the groups of people that need to be involved in that.
Mr. Carr?
I was just gonna say, as we communicate the plan and we get those comments about how vague the pillars are, I think our response should be exactly that is what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be vague, big ideas, big pillars. And then under that, you put the it's like what your mattress sits on, a box spring, right? So it's the box spring, it's the foundation of what we do, and then we're going to build on that. So
I would also add, approaching the work in this way allows for that feedback that Superintendent Swager mentioned. And I think it allows those that we might say are closer to the work to have a more direct impact on those measures that they're watching on a day in, day out basis to understand the next best moves that they need to make for student learning. So it's really about providing a lot of credence to the wonderful educators you have in your district, the leaders in the buildings, and involving them in the process. So it's not just a document that becomes created, put on your website, and then every year maybe we pull it out again and talk about how we're progressing. It's really a different way to live those goals and directly involve those closest to the work.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Casey. It's really good work, and I'm glad we're still going to be working with you for the rest of it too.
Absolutely. And I'll share with the rest of the board, just thank you for this opportunity. On behalf of Huron Studer Education, thank you for your trust in us to be out in your community, listening to them, bringing that information back to the steering committee. I've done this nationally, and I can say your steering committee was a highly engaged group of members of your community. It is rare to have that many members continue to come back meeting after meeting. And our meetings were packed full. Board members who participated, we were going right up until that last minute every time. So just really fantastic work on your part, recognizing the desire for your community to really have an active role in that. And I'm humbled and excited to continue this work with Superintendent Swager. She's fantastic. And I think it's going to be a wonderful experience moving forward.
Great. Thank you. Okay. On to any committee reports. Are there any board members that have anything they would like to report from committees? Okay. We're meeting now. All right. Superintendent report, Mrs. Swager.
Hello again. Since our last board meeting, I have been focusing on principal evaluations. We walked into this year needing to complete 17 principal evaluations and, of course, the 23 principal checkouts. And we will have those done by the end of next week. So that's going to feel really good. We've had some meetings with teammates and our work with that group. I know that Mrs. Seals is on here tonight, but we are moving forward with partnering with Teammates International and locally to create a position that is solely going to focus on growing that work. Their board will be paying for the position, and we'll be pitching in with some benefit additions. I had another meeting in Pierre on the virtual education committee, and we are trying to find ways that we can better serve our population of students that wants to work with the virtual programs that are state approved. So I'll be reporting back to you more about that. On the consent agenda today, you may have opened up and looked at our enrollment numbers. And in June, our enrollment numbers looked very different than they had looked in October. And Coy and I have had multiple discussions about our need to address the fact that we have students in our community who don't show up for 15 days and are dropped. And we're hoping that some of the work that we can put together yet this fall and working with the virtual programs at the state, that maybe we can address some of that. So I'll be reporting back to you soon about how we are going to reach out to our families that have elected to homeschool. We want to let them know how we could partner with them and possibly bring them back into classes, at least part of a day, or work with the virtual department. Superintendent meetings are going strong statewide, a lot of preparation for the next school year. I've been doing a lot of traveling in June and have more traveling yet to do. So I'm in Sioux Falls through Thursday, then I'm home. I'll be in the office on Friday, and Saturday I'm heading out to the Model School Conference with a contingent of school district administrators. And we are going to be working very, very hard learning about how to be better at our craft here in Rapid City area schools. Mrs. Seals and I also met with Cognia accreditation team, and they came in and presented some information about the accreditation process they had done with Central and Stevens. And we will be bringing forward a more detailed explanation of that. But I'm very happy to report that Central and Stevens both did very, very well in the accreditation process with Cognia. And we were told that a score of 300 is great, and both of our buildings scored higher than 300. It's like 318 and 320 something. So we're very pleased with that. We also met for 2 days last week with our school improvement teams, looking at the fourth quarter data on their school improvement plan from last year, and some of the information that is coming forward with data on testing. And that work will continue in August as we move forward with our school improvement plans for 23-24. The federal programs have submitted our consolidated app, and that has been a lot of hard work coming out of that office. June is always a really busy month for federal programs, because all of our budgets with our federal money have to be outlined and put into the state for approval. And as I mentioned earlier, the state has gotten a lot more picky about how we have to write our applications and explain our funding, and lots more details there. So I met with Mrs. Talley earlier this week, and she has submitted everything except the McKinney-Vento portion, but that didn't open until much later. Hiring continues to be an area that we have concerns about. As of last Thursday, we were looking for 27 elementary teaching positions. And in one of my principal evaluation checkouts, the principal told me that they had not had an applicant for 3 weeks for their elementary teaching positions. So the fact that we are sitting with 27 open in June is very concerning. We have 12 high school positions open. A quarter of those are in science. So science, high school science is a hot commodity right now. 9 middle school positions, 4 special education positions currently posted, 3 administrative positions, and 39 paraprofessional positions are currently posted for next year. And those numbers are concerning, and we will continue to work with our recruiters on coming up with ways that we are going to branch out to recruit for those positions. That is basically where we are sitting. this June, so I will have more to report in July, hopefully with some good news in some of those areas. But please be rest assured that we're taking our hiring process very seriously this year, and we're doing everything we can to get qualified people into those spots. Thank you very much, President Thomas.
Thank you. Any questions for her? I don't see any hands. All right, on to other. Is there an other from board members? Mrs. Clapham?
I'll be really brief. I just noticed it's on consent agenda, of course, but the our graduates, and just wanted to say, because I wasn't able to present the first one, to congratulate all of our graduates, and also to say I was really pleased and impressed and grateful with the showing that the board made at those graduations. I know it means a lot to the community, and I think on some levels, it's kind of like us seeing the fruits of our labor of what we did in this boardroom to get that many kids across the stage. And so it was really a privilege and a pleasure to be part of that. And I was really appreciative of all the board members who were able to take time out of their busy May-December schedules, because we all know how crazy May is, and to make it to those. And so I am grateful to them, and congrats to all our graduates.
Any others? Okay. I will just say I'm going to miss you, Mr. Clome. One more time. Okay, we are going to go into executive session for SDCL 1-25-2.1. I need a motion. Jim and Deb. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. There will be no further action after